Welcome to the Oversoul Shaman King podcast. I am your host, VLord GTZ, and with me I have my usual co-hosts, Marion and Sakaki.
Yo, yo, yo.
What's up?
But also with us today, we have a special guest, award-winning graphic novel author of Ghost Hog and Merman, Joey Weiser.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad we can have you on. I mean, I know you're a big Shaman King fan, so I thought it just kind of made sense.
Yeah, I am. I was excited to hear that you had started a podcast about it, because I love listening to podcasts about stuff I like, so yeah.
What a coincidence. That's what
And us three love starting podcasts, don't we?
No, that's mostly VLord. Don't.
More like we indulge you, but
Yeah, it's more like I hold you guys hostage and just be like, hey, I'm gonna start this podcast, and you guys are like required to come along. That's like the trade-off of being my friend.
We're like, okay. And, everybody, I'm here to announce that we are not starting a JJK guy.
And then, like, a month later, we started JJK podcast. The moment Toto shows up in the anime, it's just like, okay, the podcast is created.
All right, but let's...
Yeah, before we accidentally create another podcast, today we're going to talk about volumes 2 and 3 of Shaman King. Hooray.
Yay.
Yo, I'm ready.
We're so enthusiastic about this. But no, they're really good. But before we get into that proper, I wanted Joey to talk about how he got into Shaman King.
Sure. Yeah. I just before we started, I was saying that I go pretty far back with the series. If any of your listeners have heard me on Manga Mavericks or One Piece podcast, you may have heard sort of a variation of the story. But when I was in high school in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was studying Japanese and into anime and manga and stuff. And my dad started taking business trips occasionally to Japan. And I was a big Dragon Ball fan, and so because of that, I knew about Shonen Jump. So I asked him to bring me back Shonen Jump magazine, and so he started doing that. Every time he would go, he would bring back an issue or two. It eventually got to the point where the people he worked with over there knew about me, and so they would pick up issues to have waiting for him when he would.
Oh, that's awesome!
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome, and at the time, the internet was kind of a different thing than it is now. And so it was hard. Like, I had never heard of most of the series in Jump at that time. I don't know, Kenshin was still in there. And I don't know, JoJo's was in there. I'm not sure if I knew what it was at the time or not. But this is my first time seeing like One Piece and Naruto and Shaman King. So Shaman King, the first chapter that I saw, jumped out at me because it had a color page. It was chapter 50 or so, somewhere around there. And the color page is like a single page that has Ryu on it. And I guess not to give away spoilers, but he has a very distinct hairstyle in that picture that kind of caught my attention. And then there's some other characters that we haven't really encountered yet in volumes 2 and 3, Tamo and Konchi and Ponchi. On there, and so I was just like, oh, this is kind of weird looking and interesting, and the chapter itself isn't super interesting. It's just like some characters kind of waiting around a cave, and then at the end Yo comes out of the cave, and that's it. That's the chapter. So it didn't have a lot of action or anything, but the eclectic group of characters, I guess, kind of attracted me to it, and the art style. Folks like often will talk about how One Piece grabbed their attention because the art style was not like anything else in anime and manga. But I think that Takei and Oda, because they have a history being assistants together, shared a lot of sensibilities kind of in those early days. Yeah. definitely. And I think
brought that up like on Twitter like a couple of weeks ago, just because like when I cracked open Volume 1, like a lot of like their expression work and like the way that they kind of like draw body shapes and stuff, like it was really similar, especially like from Volume 1 comparing to One Piece.
Yeah, definitely, totally. And I think that they just were into some of the same stuff and probably shared a lot of same interests and things. You can see, and I think like Oda kind of leans a little more Disney, and Takei leans a little more Tezuka or something. But it's there for sure. But yeah, so the art style stood out to me, and I kept an eye out for it. And at any time I'd get one of those magazines, and then when in 2000 I took a like month-long trip to Japan, like a short student exchange, and there were 9 volumes of Shaman King out, so I got all of those as well as the 3 volumes of Butsu Zone, and then some other manga, and I took that back with me. And at that point I had I don't know, like 3 years going on 4 years of high school level Japanese education, plus like that month. Like, month doesn't sound like a long time, but like there's something to be said for immersion, right? Where it really does kind of like open up your mind for that stuff. So I could kind of like make my way through those. Like, I'd have a volume in one hand and then like a dictionary or two in another hand, and I'd kind of make my way reading through the Shaman King volumes as best I could. Occasionally I'd have to skip over stuff I couldn't figure out, but and that continued into college. I was importing books as they came out and reading them as best I could, and then I eventually kind of fell off, kind of in the upper 20s sometime, just because I didn't have as much time or money being in the middle of college. And I think maybe I'd found scanlations around that time or something. But like, as far as the Viz volumes, like I subscribed to the first year of Shonen Jump because I thought that was really exciting, but I didn't go beyond that. And I kind of was like, I've got my own Japanese versions and I've got these fan translations or whatever. So I never like got into the Viz version. So this Kodansha release is my first time like really substantially following the series with like a professional translation, which is interesting. And it makes me wonder, like, how much, I know this is kind of a revised version of the Viz translation, and it really does make me wonder sometimes, like, what decisions were made where. Like, I kind of get the feeling, VLord, you may be able to enlighten me on this, but I kind of get the feeling it's basically just the Viz translation, only they've added honorifics and translate any extra material that weren't in those that original release. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Like, for the most part, it is 1-to-1 with the Viz release, aside from, the honorifics, and they actually take out a bit of the swearing from the early volumes, interestingly.
That is interesting. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
It reads kind of like a 2000s era Viz translation, I think, a little bit. And some of the translation choices I think are cool, and some of them I don't love, but like I think it's interesting, and it's a good overall a very, very good product. I'm super pumped to read the whole series this way and get into the like following series and stuff. Oh, and then as far as the anime, I actually I hear a lot of folks talk about the Fox airings. I didn't even know that it was on Fox until years later. Because that was, again, happening while I was in college, and I didn't have cable, and I was sort of disconnected. I was in this sort of bubble of like fan subs and things like that, where I wasn't even really paying attention to what was on TV. The anime I first saw at the sort of tail end of the VHS fan sub days. I was a big VHS fan sub buyer and trader, mostly Dragon Ball. But towards the end of that, I was trying to find new series like One Piece and Detective Conan and Shaman King. And I don't remember, like maybe 8 episodes or 10 episodes of Shaman King that I watched that way. And then I eventually like found these like terrible Hong Kong bootlegs with like horrible translations.
Yeah.
That
So I know.
The seal of quality.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the kind of things like my roommates and I would like watch that together and laugh at how terrible the translations were and stuff. But you more or less like I watched the anime that way. And I was thinking about trying to track down the anime when the new anime got announced a few months ago. But I don't know. I'm kind of holding out hope that like Discotheque or somebody will pick it up and we'll get a chance to watch that old series properly. But the manga is kind of more of where my heart's at because it is like really tied in with the roots of like me studying Japanese and getting into jump manga and all that stuff.
That's really cool. That reminds me a lot of the Sakaki story with how he discovered Fukuchi and like Law of the Ueki.
oh yeah, like I actually hadn't been thinking about that at all. But yeah, that was how. Essentially, that was way back in the days again. We all we had was fan subs and scanlations, and I was watching the Law of Ueki through fan subs. But back then, we didn't have weekly. We had Crunchyroll. It was whenever a bunch of guys in college had a bit of time to translate and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And that a new episode came out, so that was kind of part of the ritual. And so I got really into Ueki, and I was just like, oh man, I can't wait for the subs. So I tried watching the anime in Japanese, but that was difficult to get because I still had really bad dial-up internet. So I just bought everything from I bought everything from Kinokuniya online. I bought like volumes 9 through 16. I found out somehow where the subs of the anime were compared to where they are in the manga, and then I just bought the rest from there. I still have those volumes.
Nice.
And I just like you. I took a dictionary in one hand and I had the manga in another, and I just kept reading them over. And every time I knew a little bit more of what was going on, until finally the fan subs caught up, and then I was kind of just comparing what the subs said. And at that point, like I was able to say, "Whoa, they translated that wrong. That's not what he said."
Nice. Yeah, that's a good feeling when you get that. Yeah, the fun thing about reading manga, if you're studying outside of that, is it teaches you vocab words that you're not learning in class, like ghosts or explosion or something. Yeah,
exactly. Those are fun times. Like, I don't know if you've heard I think you probably heard our other episodes, but yeah, me too. My Shaman King manga experience was just a random volume. A friend of mine went to exchange student in Japan and bought a random volume of it. And I still remember that random volume. I mean, VLord was actually able to find out just from my description of it what volume it was. And I found that great.
I mean, to be fair, it was a very memorable moment in the series.
So, I mean, that just goes to show you just how memorable Shaman King is. That because this was when I was just starting college. So, and I still, to this moment, remember most of that volume. So, like,
nice.
Even though I couldn't read a word of Japanese at that point. So, it was just mainly looking at pretty pictures and everything like that. And I just remembered, I mean, we're all good with spoilers here, but I just remembered guys having cars as oversouls.
Oh yeah, that is a very memorable moment, especially once you can read it and find out what the craziness that's happening there. Yeah,
and just one guy in his underwear screaming X and stuff like that. And I remember that. I can't wait to get to that because I haven't actually read that volume in English at all. And of course, the anime diverged hardcore before that point. I've seen all of the anime, but never really. I've only read a handful of chapters in American Shonen Jump. So,
yeah, that point where the anime splits like is kind of fuzzy in my head. I remember it getting kind of a little tedious, like leaning on the tournament structure. But I remember kind of thinking I liked the ending, and that maybe.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, the ending does kind of jive a little bit with like what happens for real. Like maybe they had talked to Takei about early ideas, but it changes. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, I did too. Really like the ending. I guess if I had any criticism for the anime is like they kind of besides the fact that they lean on the tournament like tropes very hard, they kind of sap what makes Hao a good villain. Like he becomes a really generic bad guy, and like he loses a lot of that charisma that he has in the manga that makes him interesting to follow. But yeah, I did finish the anime, so I can't wait to get to that volume and see it in English to see all those user girls what I didn't understand.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that was honestly like a really awesome history. Like I was mentioning this before we started, but like I think Joey alongside like Maxie and Andy's Islands are like probably some of the oldest members of like the Shaman King community, at least within like the English speaking ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was exciting to kind of hook up with Andy's Islands, especially on Twitter after kind of following his website for a long time. And Maxie, of course, is awesome. I wonder when he started reading Shaman King. That's cool.
I think he might have. There was a Shaman King episode of Manga Mavericks. He might have talked about it there.
Yeah, I probably should remember it since I was on that one, but that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
See, and I didn't really know that Maxie was into Shaman King until this dropped. Then I was like, wow, okay. Well, they were super into it.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think I've ever told Maxie this, but like their like old podcast, like Friendship After Victory, their episode on Shaman King is what helped me get back into Shaman King.
Oh, cool. That was a great show.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
Go follow Maxie, folks. They're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, eventually we're going to have them on here. You know we are.
Yeah.
So
once Maxie's less busy, like it's a guarantee.
Nice. You did.
But yeah, I mean, without further ado, I guess we should get into talking about the meat of these volumes. So we're going to start with volume 2 here. And a good chunk of this volume is focused on kind of introducing Anna into the main cast, and then also Tao Jun. And honestly, like, I really love Anna's introduction in this volume. Like, right away, she just gives off this, like, really kind of, like, dynamic personality, and kind of, it's a nice contrast with Yo, who's super laid back, and then you have Anna, who's, like, super strict and kind of just, like, no funny business.
Yeah, she has a very, like, it kind of big dramatic introduction. Like, you can tell there's a lot of weight, you know, and later you kind of, in looking back on everything, you can see that Takei already had her as a character, so he was just kind of waiting to drop her into this, and he kind of gives it, I don't know, this sort of a lot of weight behind it when she shows up.
I mean, let's just talk about the fact that, I mean, we're on volume 2 and the main character has a fiance. Like,
see, Yo's making big plays. He's the ultimate gangster.
you don't get a better introduction than that. Like, just like, and then she's just there. Oh yeah, I'm his fiance, by the way. And like we said, Anna just has this gravitas that she just drops that fact like it's nothing. Like, no big. Like, and Yo hasn't mentioned her up until this point either, so it's not like he's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get away from my fiance and nothing. We don't know anything, and then she just drops this bomb at us. I can only imagine reading this weekly and having to wait the whole week and be like, huh? What did you just say?
I have like 2 things to say about Anna. The first thing is kind of funny. Like I remember like watching the show like as a kid on Fox, and like when she came up, I was like, oh, a channeler? I think I know that word. And then like I was like, oh yeah, that's like the ghost ladies from Pokemon. And I'm like, okay, so I know what she does now. And then like when I see her like introduced like now like reading it over, I'm just like, wow, this like really cements to me how Takei's like early characters, they look so much like they have like Capcom proportions with like huge feet.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, the big like stubby toes. Big feet.
Yeah, and then like the kind of like more like I don't know, like biggish like hands and like lanky arms. It's like it's the Takei aesthetic.
Yeah. It's like I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as saying like clamped style, but like it's like that kind of like lankiness, but the blockiness of like the feet and like the hands, it makes it a lot more cartoony, which I like.
Yeah, it has, like I said, like a Tezuka like feel to it, as well as a sort of like graffiti kind of like vibe.
I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like, and I might be wrong about this, but I feel like at one point, Takei did say like hip hop and stuff was one of his influences in this art. I don't
It
know.
definitely is. I mean, 70s like funk and stuff definitely is.
Yeah, I definitely see that. When he said, when I read that interview, or I hope I didn't imagine it, but I definitely could see that influence in his art.
Well, Yo's whole look with the like big headphones around his neck and everything is a very kind of like hip hop, and the sort of loose jeans and shirt and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I want to like note here about Anna as well is that even on like her first like introduction panel here where we see her face, Takei redrew her face.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's so weird because like in volume 1, this is what he also did for Yo, where there's a bunch of scenes where he's just redrawing Yo like crazy. And that's the same thing with Anna here, where like a good chunk of volume 1 is all like redrawn Anna faces. I guess he wasn't happy with Anna's face, maybe?
Yeah, I think I feel like the female characters get it more frequently from what I've been seeing. Well, that's not true. Amida Mario gets a lot of redraws too, but he does have maybe a bit more kind of feminine, sleek face. It kind of drives me crazy, but I kind of love it because I love that Takei's a nut. But like there's a part of me that hates letting go of things and hates like history not being preserved, you know, and likes watching the evolution of an artist. And thankfully he doesn't completely redraw everything in his like newer style. Like that blockiness and chunkiness of his stuff is still preserved, but at the same time, like I can't say that it looks worse. It looks really good. Like when I compare those two, I'm always like, oh man, it sucks that this gets lost. But I do have to kind of admit that this new drawing looks great. Like, you know.
Yeah. What was probably going through his head is just like he's like going through the pages and he's just like the stuff that he leaves alone is just like, okay, yeah, this is fine. But then like whatever he decides to touch is just like, no, I pictured it differently in my head exactly like 20 years ago when I looked at this. Like he's probably just like not meticulous. Well, that is the word, but also like he just remembers exactly like how he wanted to draw it, but he couldn't really get that the first time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we talked about this in like the first episode too, and like based on like how like early the original Jump War ended, at the time that the Kazembans would have been coming out, Takei would have not been doing any series. So I guess like because of that, he had more time to really kind of like look at like his old work and like have the time to really go back and quote unquote correct what he wanted to change.
Yeah, that's the impression I got too. Like I feel like if he were in the middle of doing something else, even if he wanted to redraw everything, he probably wouldn't have been able to. But because he had that time and, you know, of course, as Marion said, he was a bit meticulous. That's why we got this. Because like this is definitely not the kind of thing that you could do and have an ongoing serial at the same time. In fact, piggybacking what Marion said, it's probably a lot of time because of time. You know, doing a weekly serial, I can only imagine, is brutal. So even if you had this like grand design of how you wanted this page to look, you know, you don't have the time to really perfect it. So that's why you do see, of course, artists go back and even weekly in their current weekly stuff redraw like panels or something. And not to this extent, of course, but in a serial that they're currently doing, you'll see that volumes are different than the weekly pages. I agree with Joey though. It is the more that VLord and hearing you talk about it, the more I kind of want to go back and see the originals, but I have no way to.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I did maybe when this episode comes out, I'll dig it up and retweet it. But I did a thread on Twitter where I compared, I don't remember what it was, like 8 or 10 pages from the next volume 3. And in some cases, it's entire pages redrawn, and in some cases, it's like 2 lines extra lines on someone's face, or like a screen tone over a character that wasn't there already. So sometimes it's pretty minor, and it just helps kind of make things stand out a little bit more. And then sometimes it's like you can tell he's like, this bugs me. I'm going to just totally redraw.
Yeah, like the attention to detail is kind of mind-boggling. Like Takei must have went like through panel by panel and done this, because like otherwise I don't know like how someone would be able to put in like this many minor adjustments. Because like you said, it's like sometimes just a few lines, but like he put in the initiative to put in those few lines for a re-release.
And like folks have like, there's been these kind of rotating Shaman King gallery shows around Japan, and I've seen some photos that people have taken, and in a lot of those cases, he's like putting that whiteout and those extra lines and tones and things right on the original art, so he's just like marking over it, and it is gone.
Oh yeah,
He's wiping it from history.
Yeah, totally. Unless you have those Shueisha Tonkabons, like, or the Viz releases.
It makes me glad that I have all 32 volumes of the Viz release.
Yeah.
Can I borrow those for a little while?
Yeah, fly to Minnesota and steal them.
Okay.
You'll find a way.
I'll Xerox them in your sleep.
Yeah.
Looking up as we talk.
But I mean, I think like having all those changes though does make rereading the series a fun experience, because I kind of like being able to go back and forth between the Viz release and the Kodansha release and just seeing like, oh, Takei changed like X thing on this page. It kind of makes it a bit more interesting too, because like obviously I know where the story is going, so now I'm not only thinking of like, how am I going to feel about these plot events again? It's also, is Takei going to change anything here?
Yeah, it forces you to like think about his decision making a little bit more and say like, why would he do that here? And you can kind of see, oh, it makes this character stand out more if there's a little extra shading on them or something like that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Plus, now I have to pay attention to every panel. It's not a thing where you're like, yeah, I already experienced the series. I'm just gonna flip through my favorite parts, and then you might miss like an entire redrawn page. So, yeah, it forces you to actually re-experience Shaman King. So it's kind of got that, I guess, for lack of better words, replayability.
And it's very convenient too that now that it's on Comixology and Amazon Kindle, you can do the panel by panel view.
True.
Sponsor us, Amazon.
We are not sponsored by Amazon, by the way. But we wouldn't mind. No.
Or a Kodansha sponsorship. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Email a few people.
Oh man, just playing around.
But I guess we should move on to Tao Jun, who's Ren's sister, who gets introduced in like the later part of this volume. And I always like found her introduction pretty interesting because like I don't know, it never really seemed like we suddenly switched to another kind of enemy this quickly for Yo. I thought like we would spend more time with Ren right away, but it also kind of makes sense to kind of have Yo face off against kind of more shamans besides just like having a central rival.
Yeah, with like a new kind of spirit and stuff. So you get kind of a little bit more of a deeper examination of all the different kinds of shaman that you could run into.
Yeah, like Jun's whole thing is that like she uses like Dao Shi's, which is like corpse manipulation essentially, and like her partner like Lee Pyron is essentially like a zombie when like we start out like with them, and like he's essentially I guess like a kind of loosely based off like Bruce Lee. With like
definitely
with like how he's like a master martial artist who's like invented like his own like special like art of like fighting
and dies mysteriously.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah, no, it's directly based off of Bruce Lee for sure, and then mixing it with the going with the China theme, the hopping vampire thing. I don't know if any
Yeah,
of
the
y'all have,
Jiangxi.
Yeah.
seen hopping vampire movies like Mr. Vampire or something, but it's a great trope I love.
I haven't seen that, but I do want to watch more of like that kind of media, just because like in like fictional media, like I love Jiangxi's just like as a character design, like they're all super cool. Like there's that one from Darkstalkers.
Yes.
I forgot her name, but she has like these
Tianko
little
or
claws.
something.
Yeah, Ishenko. And like it's just so cool. Like even like I was reading like a light novel, and it was like Infinite Dendrogram. There's a Jiangxi there too, and it's just they look so damn cool because like the way that they have like their limbs out and stuff with like the food, the talisman covering their faces, like
Oh,
it just
boy. One character you're talking about too.
they just look super super cool. And the way that Takei draws Pyron, like he just looks so badass with like
Yeah.
the super like thick arms, and his introductory pose once he like comes out of like the coffin, and he does like that pose with like they have like their arms straight out. It's just it looks so menacing, but also like really cool. Like it's just awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing is that the hopping vampires, because they have like rigor mortis, are very stiff, and so they just hop around because they can barely move their bodies. Yeah, Mr. Vampire is my personal recommendation if you want to check out a Hong Kong hopping vampire movie.
I will definitely note that.
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention about Pyron that I found interesting is that in the Viz translation, he's called a Bylong. So they they kind of just changed it.
Chinese like romanization, like I still don't understand it.
Yeah, like they do the same thing with his master later too, where like in the Viz translation it's Sha Wen, and Kodansha chooses to use Shamon.
I believe Shaman is what it is in Japanese, because I think that's the joke, is that it's like shaman. But
yeah, I think like it's probably more of like a error that Viz made when they did it. Just maybe like lack of knowledge of like the like intentional reference.
I think Viz was trying to maybe like kind of do a middle ground where sometimes they gave them the Chinese names because you can read Chinese differently, right, than you can in Japanese. Yeah. And since they're like Chinese characters, I think that's what was going on there. But like, yeah, I think Pyron is the Japanese, and like I always assumed it would be like Pylong. But they're doing Pyron, so I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, because long is an actual word, is like dragon or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, clearly we have to bring on Jason Thompson to justify the Viz translation choices. Put him on trial, but
it would be cool to hear from him, to hear him talk about this. Not to grill him, but just to hear about his experience with the series and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to hunt him down at some point.
Why do you keep saying such dangerous things, man?
It's all part of my master plan, Sakaki. You'll see. It'll all make sense soon.
Okay, hope so. I want to be an accomplice or something. But anyway, one thing I have to say with like the chapter 12, I just love how this like everything in the beginning of this chapter is drawn, like the very first panel where you just see this guy walking down the street smoking, and the theater and this cat there. Just I love when they set things up silently like that.
Yeah,
and that panel's like wholly not necessary. Like, we know Yo's in the movie theater, he's watching movies. Start there, but like the fact that we have this whole kind of scene in front of us that's sort of irrelevant to everything else. I like those kind of things. And of course, later on in the chapter, like a page later, when Yo's watching a movie and he's like reacting to everything, he's like one of those guys that's like they would yell at the screen probably.
I love how that's paneled too.
Page too.
Yeah, look, it's like a little film strip there and everything on the page.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that too. Like, there's another manga, Sunday, of course, I'm gonna bring up Sunday, that uses that for all of the flashbacks. So they're like a film. They're like a film reel instead of just like, because in manga when there's a flashback they use black for pages.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, damn! I did not. I never put that together in my head. That's why it's black in the background.
I only know that because I follow a lot of mangaka on Twitter, and one of them it probably was Fukuchi, because Fukuchi's very open about his process, and he remembered just like he mentioned something about just not liking doing flashbacks too much because of the black bordering, and like he sometimes gets to do it, and he's glad he has his assistants to kind of point out, hey, that's a flashback, right? God damn it. So that's how I figured to learn about that. But yeah, like this manga in Sunday, Tale of the Outcast, like every flashback is a film reel, and it's so they use the black space and to justify it being looking like that, which I found really cool. So to see Takei use it in this instance kind of just made me think of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I also really love, like, right after that, Ami Damaru, like, sort of reveling in how awesome it was to see this, like, dramatic movie, because he'd never seen a movie before.
And, like, yeah, they're carrying on with their own conversation. He's back there nerding, and I really like
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And, like, how Manta's, like, also, like, the martial arts, like, film expert of the group.
yeah. He's a big Python fanboy.
Yeah, like I love like on the next page how like he's just like smirking with like his like finger pointing at like the images of like Byron. Like it's just that face, like something about it just like gets me. It really does remind me of like a Tezuka face in a way, like when he's doing like a smirk on like one of his characters.
Yeah.
Nata is a Tezuka character. Let's just be for real.
It's true. The little gourd pig. Yeah. Yeah, I think June and Pyron's relationship is really interesting, kind of as it evolves, but it seems kind of an extension of the same themes that were happening with Ren, where it's like, don't use your spirits as a tool. But in this time, you actually get to see the spirits' free will, kind of like the effect it has on them, whereas like Bason like never really like freaks out or rebels against Ren, but here we get sort of to see how it affects these spirits to just treat them like tools, which I think was a cool variation on that theme.
Yeah, I think it's especially cool because I think like to some extent you can kind of like explain away the fact that like Basan is like he's like a military general or whatever, and he's used to like because of his position like following orders and that kind of being in that kind of like mentality, I guess, and like accepting that there's like always someone above or whatever. But then like Pyron is like an actor, and he's very like individualistic. Like the fact that he's basically like playing himself in all his movies, and like his movies are basically like a form for him to like extend like his like martial arts or whatever to the world, and like that's like his like life purpose. And the fact that he wasn't able to like fulfill that is kind of why like he's still like he still has like attachment to the world, and like being able to tie that like the reason that he's like he still retains his individuality to like his relationship to Tao Jun is like really cool. Like the way that it kind of gets like introduced and also like wrapped up within like this one volume. Like I think it was handled really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the one thing that I find like very interesting, I guess, like comparing this to Bason and like Ren's relationship is that you definitely see like June is far more open to the idea that hey, like spirits and ghosts aren't necessarily tools, and like by the end, like yeah, like after kind of Pyron gets like his agency back, really, he's willing to still work with June as like an equal. Which when I first read this volume, I felt that was kind of weird because like you're literally working with the person that like has been keeping you hostage all this time.
Yeah.
They killed you, bro.
Yeah, but at the same time, it makes sense in a way because like yeah, this is the only way that he'll be able to continue perfecting like the Dando techniques on his own terms.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of see throughout the series them kind of growing closer, which is cool.
Yeah, like I definitely like in the later volumes the direction that Takei like actually takes it in, and I think that assuaged a lot of my concerns that I had with it initially, for sure. Which like Takei's usually good at. Like anything I feel like very mixed on, he usually turns me around on by like later on.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I like about him as an author is he's very kind of he's working in a sort of shonen fighty realm, but he's very heady, and you can tell that he thinks a lot about this stuff, and possibly even like ends up disagreeing with stuff that he had done earlier, and is able to kind of reconcile it in an interesting way as things develop.
Yeah, and like even when like he's going against like even messages that he has early on, it still feels very true to the themes that he's conveying, especially in Shaman King's case, where like no matter what really happens, he's still very much sticking to his guns of like, okay, all the people who see shamans have some part of them that's actually good, and like there's no reason to like persist violence just for the sake of violence, because that will just create an endless cycle. And we see that here too with like Yo, where like despite like June having done some like definitely terrible things and her family doing terrible things, of course, like Yo doesn't like think that okay, June deserves to die now. It's like no,
Right.
like we're gonna talk this out like sensible people.
Yeah, you can tell very much that June is like a product of like her environment, and like because of that, when she's like actually when she sees like Pyron and like how he actually feels, the fact that like once he kind of like once he's like beaten by like the mentor or whatever, and he's like kind of just like freed, I guess. She sees that like, oh damn, like this is like, even though it's a ghost, it's really like an actual person. So I can't really like reconcile like actually treating him like a tool. And like yeah, like I don't know, it's really interesting because I feel like the way that Takei has been handling like Yo's I guess like outlook and how that kind of bleeds into the people that he fights over time, like he's been doing it in like a really like gradual but like believable way. And yeah, that's what I appreciate the most about like the resolution of the fight.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm quickly like scrolling back through the fight again, and you can definitely see a clear shift in like June's reaction towards Pyron after he lashes back at her, and like you can kind of sense like okay, that's the realization moment for her of like okay, this mentality I've been having might be wrong.
Yeah.
After like Yo saves her, I think.
Yeah, like right around there. Like I'm mainly referring to like kind of right before that when like he's just kind of going wild.
Oh yeah. And he's like attacking her basically.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, she's never thought about how this affects them before, and so now she's being forced to confront that, and seems more sympathetic than at least Ren does at this point.
Yeah, and it really does tie back to like later on too. Not to talk too much about post Volume 3 events, but like just the general kind of dynamic of the Ren family and kind of how unhealthy it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can definitely tell like Ren is definitely on like the farthest spectrum of it because he is the youngest and like he's probably had the heaviest influence and less time to really question it. And
exactly, like yeah.
And I think that they're really heavily grooming him more than her, maybe. But that's maybe getting into discussions for later volumes. One thing I wanted to bring up about this, flipping through, is my favorite page of this volume is that one where Pyron's like has that he's falling back and there's those like shattering glass.
Yes. Bring that up.
And it's such a like genius way of just conveying this whole man's life like in one page. So like efficient and so succinct, but like very effective. You see reflections in each of the shattered parts of glass of like things that they don't even bring up, but you like understand what they mean about different parts of his life and the people in his life and everything that he's missed. and it's just so good.
Yeah, I tweeted about this page when I got there, and I was like, "This is how you do economical storytelling. Like,
Mhm.
it's you get all the information you need, no text, and it's very artfully done. Like, if you haven't seen this page, definitely you have to see it. Like, it's Chiron flying backwards after he's been shot, and it's like, as Joey says, like he's crashing through glass as he takes his final breath. But all of these scenes just play out, and wow, it's really amazing. And for a single page to tell this much story about a character without feeling like we were cheated in any way. Like, yeah, he could have had a whole chapter about Pyron's past, and that would have been great too. But to do it this way, and it feels right. It feels like this is the information we need to know about what he's about. That'll inform us into what he's going to do next, which is seek revenge against the Towels, because they did take everything from him.
So good.
Very, very good.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
Just add one more thing to the Jin discussion. You guys pretty much covered most of the points, which is just that, yeah, as Marion said, she's a product of her environment. I just don't. It in a little way, I wouldn't say so much I feel sorry for her, but in the sense that, like, this is how the family's always done things. So, like, she's probably the first one that's maybe not the first, but, like, I'm sure nobody's informed her, oh, yeah, by the way, they can go berserk and they might try to hurt you if that happens. But I'm sure, like, the family.
It's in the fine print. Don't worry about it.
If you turn your foo around and see the tiny print on the bottom, it's right there.
Yeah, no, it's like, I'm pretty sure that's not in the Tao instruction booklet of how to handle, your corpse puppets. So
yeah, if you're a good enough shaman, they don't go berserk, right?
Yeah.
So
that's it. That's the only insurance plan you need.
We're planning to patch it out in version 2.0, but don't worry about it for now. It doesn't happen often.
Make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's on those talismans, so everything's as it should be.
No, I just find that interesting, like that. Yeah, I guess it just lends more to the fact that June is more sympathetic, because in a way, although she controls Pyron, she really doesn't. So, like, in comparison to Ren, where Bison, as said, Bison's used to having a hierarchy, and Ren's on top of that. Mm-hmm. So there's no questioning it. I mean, although, yeah, but questioned June before now, but it's like, you take the talisman away and he's his own guy now. And the fact that in the volume 2, he's crying because deep down he's still there.
Mm-hmm.
The gulf of difference between her and her brother is just that she only thinks she has control.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to bring up is I think it's like page 80 or 183, when Pyron first like sees his master again. I actually kind of really like the redraw that Takei does here of Pyron, where like it's a lot more focused on his face, and like it, like instead of like a background, it's just all black. And yeah, I think like it really kind of like gives a better focus on kind of like Pyron's reaction to it, which is interesting.
Yeah, a thing about these 2 volumes that struck me, and this isn't really like spoiling anything, but this is kind of the last hurrah for like grabbing other spirits to possess Yo and other people. Like at this point, Yo's pretty much paired up with Amidamaru, and stuff like the summoning his master and putting him in him, and then later like putting Mosuke in Ryu and stuff, like, is a little bit of the last time that we see this kind of like taking random spirits and putting them in people stuff.
Yeah, like that's like really the first time I read it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of like Deus Exy type stuff, because it's like, oh yeah, and his power is literally to take spirits who have moved on, which you technically aren't supposed to meet anymore. But like, no, I think it works, at least, even though like we don't see it that much after. I think that the fact that it's used in this way to help like give those other spirits that kind of closure, and like yeah, like I think it's appropriate like in the way that it's used, because it's not really like, well, yeah, like I do appreciate the fact that we get like that like badass old man trope with like the the master who is like, he looks so feeble after he possesses Yo, and he's just like, oh, what's going on? I can't hear that.
that panel of Yo like holding his hand up to his ear, being like, huh? It's so funny.
Yeah, and but then immediately after, like he jumps on Pyron's leg and is like, oh, it's Pyron. Why so pale, boy? It's good because you get to use those kind of character moments for like obviously comedic effect, but also getting to like reunite. Like what I really love about the premise of Shaman King is the fact that it's ghosts, and like a lot of these ghosts have like attachment to the living world or whatever, and you get to like see how they process their feelings of being like dead, or like the time that they spent alive, and like the ways that can like interact thematically with obviously like the character's worldview and stuff like that. Like I think Anna's like power of like being like a medium is obviously like I said, it could be kind of too sexy or whatever, but like the fact that it was used in this way before being like, I guess, like shelved for being like used in that sense again, was like it did a good job for like setting like the like I guess like a standard for like the series' tone, and like the way that Takei wants to treat his characters.
Yeah, I like how you put that about it. Sort of a lot of it is an effective way to like write a story about like giving people closure. And that's a lot of what the first volume is kind of these short stories about that. And then here we're getting kind of a little bit more into the battle aspects, but still getting a little bit of that, which is cool. I like that. I like it as a story device. And you get
we're
some
like
funny
way more. Yeah, we're still like doing the same thing from volume 1, but also like dipping our toes more into like the action stuff, while keeping hold of like the heart of the series.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now we should move on to Volume 3, which a lot of it is focused on the fabulous Ryu and Tokagero, the spirit of the mercenary that Amidamaru killed when he was alive. And I really love that, like, we finally get more, like, of a context behind, like, Ryu's character, because even in the first volume, I just always loved his design. And who doesn't love that pompadour? I mean, it's fabulous. So
I love the running gag of just the pompadour keeps getting cut.
Yeah, it's so good.
We skipped over it, but that happened again in volume 2 with Ren.
Oh yeah, it did when Manta. Oh, actually, yeah, it was Ren cutting it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love how everything's kind of intertwined. That that he has to go get the wooden sword in volume 2, and then that kind of leads to this story in volume 3. And Ryu's my favorite character, so this is a volume that I enjoy for sure. I love his quest for his happy place, or in Japanese they say his best place. Yeah, he says besto puresu, but and so that's what I knew it forever, and that's what it is kind of in my heart, is best place. But I think happy place is a good translation for that. It kind of makes maybe a little bit more sense.
It's a good compromise.
Yeah. So yeah.
Best place trekkers.
Yes, that's what that's from.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
This is also another chapter cover that Takei completely redid too. And
I need to see the original now.
Yeah.
And that it's the same parody. It says best place trekkers, but like maybe in a different font, and like it's the same drawing, but like composition of characters and everything. But it's totally enhanced. Like everything's a lot more dramatic and shiny looking in the new version.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pop it into our chat.
Okay, good. Yeah, there we go.
Whoa.
Wow, it's like night and day.
It's like night and day.
The glow up.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Even like the dynamic perspective of like the ship is like you can see like the shift a little bit with like the angles. Wow, that is crazy.
Wow. Okay. No. Like, not that I didn't believe you, VLord, but seeing this is like, holy crap! Takei really is a madman.
Yeah. Yeah, he really went for it. He was like, he had something in his head and he wanted to push it even farther when he did these Kanzen bonds.
I mean, he literally pushed it far. He made the pompadour bigger.
It's true.
We did. God, and the funny thing is, it's like, okay, we were talking about this before we went on mic, but like with some of the later remix tracks, they're like extras in the volumes.
Mhm.
You know, you can definitely tell that, all right, this was drawn at a different time than the original, you know, chapter. But this one, I would have never thought this was redrawn. Like,
I mean, it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense in retrospect.
It's a little too shiny right here.
I mean, yeah, it does make sense in retrospect, but it's just like that wouldn't have been my first thing to be like, oh, well, wow, the art looks totally different here.
Newer Takei's like he loves to give Ryu those like luscious lips that he doesn't quite have in this older version, and really kind of gives him kind of beautiful eyes with long eyelashes and stuff. So yeah, those are kind of telltale signs for Ryu that he's been redrawn.
Yeah, I mean, as I've been comparing like the volumes, like while reading, like the main thing I notice now and how I'm able to usually pick out the differences is one, the angles on the actual body shapes, because like modern Takei's art style is like far more angular than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Joey said, it's the lips and the eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, so basically he JoJo'd him.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
he turned the glam up 500%.
Yeah, I mean everyone looks more fabulous in his current like style, really.
I mean, exactly. I mean, like you said, you know, the eyes more beautiful, the luscious lip. That sounds like being JoJo'd.
I mean, in general, like his current art is a lot softer in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kidding, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think JoJo's is also an influence on Shaman King for sure.
Oh yeah. It
I mean,
definitely is.
Oh yeah.
Both their stands.
He's an admirer of Araki's work.
Yeah.
Fellow man of culture.
I mean, if Togashi is, and Togashi's like that generation of like right before Takei, then it goes without saying that, you know, Takei would be inspired by JoJo. So
yeah, I mean, like thinking about it, like a lot of these early plots definitely seem like things that you would probably see in the JoJo series.
I feel like just Takei is just like not aesthetic, but the way he tells the stories, the fact that they are, and I hate to put it this way, but it's the best way to put it, they are kind of bizarre. Like it's the way like Shaman King, the characters in Shaman King and some of the plots and everything, yeah, they do feel like I've always thought Shaman King is slightly more off the beaten track than in other shonen series.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it has a weird humor to it that's different than a lot of Jump type humor.
Yeah.
It'll have a lot of the same kinds of jokes, but they're told differently. And like I love the way he does that like pratfall thing that is common in manga, but he does them in very strange ways. Like Monto will be like flying through the air.
Yeah. There's one time where he's like firing laser beams out of his mouth or eyes or something like that. And it's like it's not like just a comedic effect. It like blasts through a paper or something. I don't remember exactly. I even think I took a picture of it. Hold on. But yeah, that was one thing that I really like about like Manta's like pratfall. Just that.
Yeah, like gags that like interact with the environments and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely like that. Takei doesn't really refrain from doing that, and like even like context wise, how he'll spice in jokes in the middle of just like very serious situations, and
yes,
usually it lands too, which is the best part.
Okay.
Yeah, revisiting this for the first time in a long time, that's a thing that's striking me a lot is like how funny this is. Like it's still very funny and the humor really holds up. Oh man.
Laser beam
There's that
montage.
laser eye panel.
It's beautiful.
Oh man.
It was so good. I had to take a picture of it.
That's so good.
Joey, what makes Rue your favorite character?
Okay. I like the sort of mixture of comedy and seriousness for sure. I like Yakuza and delinquent characters a lot of the times. And the big pompadour and stuff is just appealing to me. But and a lot of the stuff that I really like about him kind of comes in later volumes. But in these first few volumes, he's a great villain because he's very fun. And in this third volume, we get to kind of be more sympathetic for him. And he doesn't act a lot on his own until the very end in those like last few chapters where he's decided to kind of devote himself to being Yo and Anna's underling, like is very, very charming and funny and sweet. I love that mixture of a kind of tough guy character who's actually a big softy and sweet, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say like what really appeals to me is like the fact that he's very much like a kind of like a Kuwabara type character where he's a delinquent, but he also has like a code of honor and stuff, and like that comes into play a lot during this volume when he gets possessed by Tokaguro or whatever, and his crew is just like, hey, the real Ryu wouldn't really act like this, like he wouldn't do this kind of stuff. He's a good guy, and like that's why we follow him or whatever, and like I really appreciate that. I think that having this here, like this focus on Ryu for like this volume before we like get really into like the shaman fight and like introducing all like this bevy of like brand new characters and actual shamans and stuff, like it does a lot because Ryu, like for being like a comedic character and introduced by like the first chapter or whatever, you can see how his presence actually like kind of makes a difference, I think, in terms of just making the cast itself more like charming and more like aware of how like Yo in particular, like how like his actions with like involving like Manta, even though he doesn't really like he can see ghosts, but he's not really like a shaman, and like how the fact that like now he's kind of like bringing Manta into this world, and like now Ryu is another person who's also in that situation. Like he's becoming more aware of like the effect that his actions have on like normal people, and I think for Ryu in particular to be like dragged into like the shaman world or whatever is really cool because we see like his impact on like all this the other like delinquents in the town or whatever, and how he basically like rounded them up, but for the sake of like giving them like that happy place, and like how to kind of like keep them off the streets and stuff. And thematically, like going back to what I liked about the last volume, the fact that Tokaguro like possesses Ryu, and like his story of being like a bandit and being like a ruffian and an outlaw is like I don't know, it's really appropriate because it's appropriate for him to possess Ryu because basically Tokaguro is the kind of person who can only like take and take and take and steal because that's like the way that he survived in life. But for all of like how like badass Ryu wants to be, and like how like menacing he tries to like come off as, like he's really the kind of character who he gives to other people. Like he's an outcast too, but he provided a place for all the people who like follow him and stuff. And to show like a soul like that, like Tokaguro, of like this other possibility that you could have done or that you can, like, because you're still here in the world as like a ghost or whatever. Like that's what it really cemented together the fact that like, yeah, Ryu deserves to be like a main character.
Yeah. A part that always kind of like tugs at my heart, even after like reading it twice in the last month or so, is that part where Ryu's gang has like had enough and they all like punch him because it's that thing of seeing a group of people come together for a common cause that is always kind of a powerful thing to see. But it also is like these guys like care so much about Ryu that it's like breaking their heart to see him act in this way that they can't understand, you know. And I think it tells you a lot about the character and about the relationship that they all have together, which I think is very sweet.
Exactly.
Yeah, talking about his like delinquent roots, I wanted to mention this, just a fun fact. His real name is Ryunosuke Umemiya, and that last name Umemiya, I think, may be a reference to Tatsuo Umemiya, who is an actor from the like 60s and 70s, especially that was in a series of films called the Delinquent Boss film series, where he's this like, you know, not quite gangster, but sort of delinquent biker gang boss guy. And it's a very like iconic series. The Furio Bancho is what it's called. And I think Takei is kind of a film nut. And so I think that is a reference for sure, which is cool.
That's cool. Actually, that reminds me also, because this is a completely different series, but in Ace of Diamond, there's also like a delinquent character whose name is Umemiya, and he does have like he has like a pompadour, and
Nice.
and he has that kind of like his accent too, like he talks like a delinquent and stuff, and that's cool if that's all coming from like a particular like famous kind of person named Umemiya.
Everything makes sense now. My brain's just like exploding.
The connections, making all those connections. But that's interesting. I really love it when you can tell that there's a wellspring of inspiration for authors, and it's like the same thing. Like everybody is in the same movie theater. Can you imagine like these authors not knowing each other as like kids watching these movies, and they're in maybe they're even in the same theater, and they walk away and years later make this work, and it's like, you know, maybe Oda's reading this thing. We know he's a movie nut, and he's flipping through and he's reading Shaman. This is his buddy, and he's like, I wouldn't be surprised they had this kind of conversation. Like, whoa, you saw that movie too? Yeah, I loved it.
That's what they talk about during the New Year dinners or whatever at the jump office.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but like, and you've probably talked about this on the show. Oda and Takei were assistants together, so they had lots of hours logged together where they could have just been sharing movie trivia and whatnot.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually like did watch movies together, like in the like we're all working together or stuff, because that they do that kind of stuff. Like sometimes the person that they assist, the mangaka that has like the assistants or whatever, like they'll like put like a movie or a TV show or something, and I see them talk about it in like author blurbs and like the volumes or like during the magazines.
Yeah, that's true. They could have seen the movie together then and just be like, hey, it's movie night, you all bring something. And
who's bringing the Bruce Lee movie?
Going back to about Ryu though, like one of my favorite parts of this volume is like, I don't know if that's how it was it's a Viz translation, so most likely. But I just love that he sees Anna and you know he tries to hit on her and she's like, yeah, no, nice do, loser. And then she goes back home, and then he finds out that Yo and Anna are living together. And he's like, Cole, you're living in sin? I don't know why that line makes me lose it every time I see it.
Because he's a tough guy. He shouldn't care about that kind of thing. But he's got a big open heart.
I mean, like, I really wish I had the Japanese version to just see if it was that exact phrase. I mean, yeah, of course, the idea of it is because he's this tough guy, and it's like, why are you worried about that? But it's just specifically that phrase, you're living in sin. So like, I mean, you're gonna be like, yeah, that's inappropriate, or any other like school marm line, but that specific one just never fails to get a smile on my
Yeah, that's one thing I completely forgot to do is like look at the Japanese release for this. Because I actually do own the first like 3 volumes of it in Japanese. And like there's definitely points in this where like the Viz release is totally ad-libbing stuff. Like in volume 2, there's the part where like Manta's like telling Ryu that he needs the sword to help Yo, and they start joking like, man, Banta really likes yogurt, guys.
Because he's saying yo. That's funny.
That healthy.
Yeah, I have those books. Yeah, I have, like I said, those first like 25 or 6 volumes in my closet somewhere, so I can dig that up and find that if I remember. I'd be interested to see what that line is too.
Yeah, I'm really interested in. I always love that when I'm reading stuff in English is just to say, you know, if I have the Japanese version, it's just be like, I'm just to see the creative like decision making and why they translated it that way opposed to translating.
I want to see what was the original for the page. It was like 167 where Amidamaru and his friend, I forgot his name, that they're like punching each other, and Anna's like,
yes, I remember.
Like, oh, what did I miss? And Anna's like, clearly 600 years ago, men were as stupid as they are today. The same homophobic rituals to obscure the fact that they have feelings.
Yeah, when I looked at that, I was like, wait, what? Is that like, was that in the Viz version? I was like, oh, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
I was curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I tweeted that page too, actually. And it got a bit of traction, but yeah, I want to know what the original line is there too.
I would love it if that was actually like a one-to-one. Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's weird because, like, I think, like, this translation holds up very well, but it is quirky things that really kind of make you think, like, huh, these were some interesting choices at first.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, but I do think it kind of reads, like, it reads like something that's less literal than a lot of translations are these days, where they're maybe a little looser. Might have even had the like rewriters back then. I don't remember if they were still doing that.
Yeah, for this one they still had an adapter. So
yeah,
the good old days.
You're making me want to buy this in Japanese myself.
Yeah, I think we said like the original script was from like the Viz version was Lillian Olsen, right? She does really good work. Because I think she was also credited for Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah, like she's on like a lot of the old Jump releases.
It's interesting.
And she was in some newer ones too. Like I think she did World Trigger before that went to Caleb.
I mean, yeah, I think like we were looking at this like last time we were talking about this, and yeah, I think she's like still doing stuff for Viz.
That's good.
Yeah, I am curious, like, because there in Volume 1, there were a few points where like they did completely retranslate stuff, and I do wonder, like, from Kodansha's perspective, like, what was the line where they decided, okay, this is something we have to retranslate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I'd love to hear from the new translator to hear about their process, because they're obviously like, I know Steven, who does the One Piece translations, like has done this kind of thing like with the Akira volumes and stuff, where he just kind of like looks over the first translation and then figures out if anything is kind of a little weird and then makes those tweaks, rather than doing a flat out new translation. And that seems like what they're doing with these.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I know like all the new lines or new parts that are translated in these volumes are by Aaron Proctor, who's like done like Card Captor, Clear Card, and like Kudenori Stork. So like they've done a lot of really good work. But yeah, it definitely makes you curious, like given like how like much is like kept intact here, like well where the little changes are made. Like the main rehaul on this release is definitely the lettering at times, because like all of it had to be redone from scratch. And like yeah, I think the lettering is a definite improvement, because when I go back up to my Viz volumes often, one thing I notice is that there's far too much white space in the bubbles. And, like, obviously some of that's from, like, the text being, like, originally vertical in Japanese, but, like, it definitely feels like it's not big enough at times. And, honestly, I kind of do prefer the Japanese sound effects for Shaman King over the English ones.
I love getting to see the Japanese sound effects. Like the practice of having like a smaller English word underneath the Japanese word is like a little awkward looking, but I really value getting to see those sound effects because they were drawn by the artists or their assistants. So
yeah, like I get why it's done usually, but like for me, it's like I really kind of like it because, like you said, yeah, it's part of what they drew. It's like when I read the Chainsaw Man volumes and I see like all of like the sound effects for that redrawn because they're so heavily integrated into the art.
oh, really? I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so they do like fully like letter them and everything, and it looks good, but it also takes a while to get used to because I'm so used to like seeing Fujimoto's sound effects. And that's the same thing here with Decay, because it's like a lot of the time he does integrate it very well into the artwork.
Yeah, and the letterer on this like definitely takes care to like if a sound effect has like a screen tone on it or is transparent, like they match that with their text a lot of the time, which is cool. So it's not just like flat text saying this says, bam. It actually has a little bit of effort and artistic stuff put into it for sure.
Yeah, and like I've heard things on the grapevine that this was like a nightmare to get right on the lettering front, and that's part of like why all the delays kept happening is because like it's kind of a monumental feat to really be able to do all of it, just because of like Decay's stuff is not easy to letter, I feel. With like just how much there is. So yeah, huge shout out to Janley and Ivan Conception. Like I know they've mentioned on Twitter that they spent like a lot of time working on this, so it definitely paid off.
Yeah. I'm curious to see when the print volumes eventually drop, like if there's any tweaks made at that point too. Either in the translation or lettering or anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too, because like often for Kodansha releases, like the digital release and the physical release are like different because they have to update it anyways because of how Kodansha formats their digital. It doesn't work one-to-one with a physical release because of how I think it's like from how they frame their pages and how it's structured for the digital release, it can't be printed that way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a very strange choice. But actually going back to the Amidamaru Mosuke scene where they reunite, I really love the little like Tomorrow's Joe like cross counter punch that they do there.
Yeah, it's sweet. I love how like you see the two spirits punching each other, and then like a couple panels later, you see the two human hosts like reeling back from the punch. I thought that was a really good effect.
Yeah, it really leaves an impact.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked too much about the actual like confrontation between Yo and Tokagero. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like less of an action fight. It's more of kind of like a standoff because Yo doesn't want to injure Ryu. And so it gets into a lot more kind of philosophical debate and stuff rather than let me show you my cool moves.
Yeah, it's like for Tokagero, for him to win is kind of like he wants to break Yo's ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like very early on too, it becomes like obvious that like, hey, like Tokagero can't win this out of brute force, and like he's trying to use like underhanded tactics and stuff to somehow just torment Amidamaru before he dies.
Yeah.
For such a big head, he has such a small brain.
I was waiting for Marion to make some joke like about his head.
Marion laying down the fire like usual.
I was waiting, like I was like, "Well, please don't disappoint me." And you didn't. Thank you.
We waited all week for this.
No, I waited like 2 seconds because I was actually thinking of it the whole time. Like, what should I say? It worked out.
But yeah, like I agree. Like, I do like the resolution of the fight just being Yo being himself. Like he doesn't go out of his way to be brutal or to fight him. He just says, yeah, he possessed he lets Tokagero like possess him, and even Anna's figuring, oh, he's just gonna conquer his soul and this will be over with. And then when it's clear that he didn't do that, even she's like taking it back. Like, I can't believe that idiot just let him. And you would think, and then at that point, Tokagero is about to kill himself in Yo's body. I mean, kill Yo using himself, and then he can't because he's like, this dude just let me do this, and I can't.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it really comes down to like what Tokagero really wanted, because it was like he wanted to have like someone like who genuinely trusted him, having like a meaningful bond that he hadn't had since like his mother, and that's clearly been haunting him ever since. And the line that really gets me out of all of it is when Amidamaru tells him like, yeah, you were stronger than me in a way, because I don't think I would have been able to make it through those times if I didn't have Mosuke and like my loved ones around me.
Yeah. You survived without relying on anyone by your fierce will to live alone, to validate your mother's heroic sacrifice. I do not know that I could have survived those terrible days without friends like Mosuke. Had I no one to protect, perhaps I would have learned only to take like you. Damn, that shit is powerful, man. Like,
yeah, like when I first read that like years ago, I was like, wait, this isn't a Shonen Jump series? Like, crap.
Where's my punchy kickflip?
What's funny is it envelops the friendship after victory thing, and without Shaman King does it in its own way, which I really like, and it stays true to itself. And this doesn't come off as like really corny or anything like that. It really feels genuine, probably because it does come from Amidamaru. Like, I feel like if it had been Yo saying this, then it probably would have come off a little bit like, oh, though. But
yeah,
the fact that Amidamaru lived back at that time and he slayed this guy, and then even now he's like the guy that he slayed. Even he's giving him his respect. Like, yeah, man, if I couldn't be you, and I like that. And I like that's how this. And again, that this less with punchy kickflip, and more just with what does Tokagero really in the end? That's what this whole fight comes down to, or really not even fight, but just kind of like difference of ideals.
Yeah.
And in the end, it really isn't even that, because Tokagero wants the same thing they do.
Yeah.
He just had a tough time really conveying that. Not even that he had the tough time until he got to this point where he's like, wow, actually, yeah, we are the same. I just want friends.
Yeah, and I really love that it does come down to Takei really sticking to his guns here. Where it's like Volume 2, where it's like, no, we don't have to make this into a fight. Because there's no point in that. Like, what does that accomplish for these characters? Rather than just, oh, cool, more violence, fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to revisiting and to hearing you all talk about eventually. That's the sort of like tension that makes Shaman King interesting and maybe made it not as huge of a hit, is that it's a shonen battle manga where kind of it ends up being more and more built around pacifism and not around fighting, which is interesting. That's a thing that I think is very, very interesting that I could talk a long time about, but I have to wait till we get later into the series, I think.
Yeah, but honestly, like that is something that like when I think about too with the series, it's like the thing that really draws me to it still is the fact that it does become this very different thing than what you'd really expect, and it's much less about the fights and more about the ideology and kind of those themes of pacifism and also kind of just morality.
Yeah,
you could tell like the way that the series is propelled is very much by like Yo's outlook itself, and like how that bleeds into the other characters. Like I said, with the way that Tokagero was he was possessing Ryu, and like the fact that he chose Ryu of all people, the fact that the way that he treats the people around him affected how he like all of his life choices up to that point Like he could have easily like turned into like another Takaguro, but obviously he didn't. Like he had like that bit of good in him, the same as like Yo did, and like the pacifism comes from a point of like wanting to understand each other, and like that's what really appeals to me in general, because like Yo is like he's a pacifist, but clearly like he does like his training and stuff, and like he knows what he has to do like as a shaman to like grow stronger or whatever in order to be able to like support like his worldview or whatever. He needs to be strong enough to like defend himself, and like that's the kind of like spin on the action part that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and the thing that we skipped over in the first in volume 2 is the little flashback of Yo as a little kid, where we get, I believe, the first like statement of his dream, which is one of the other things that kind of makes this and in some ways kind of an anti Shonen Jump series, where a lot of times your heroes want to be the best, want to be the king of this and king of that, which this is like the Shaman King, but like his dream is to listen to my favorite music all day, relax, and live a comfort and convenience. And it's like that kind of continues to be his motivating factor, is that he has to work super hard so that he can live a relaxing, chill life. And that is sort of goes against the sort of typical ideal of the hardworking, go get 'em, Genki, hero that you get in a lot of these kind of shonen manga, which I think is really interesting and cool. It's basically my favorite shonen dream in any series, because I identify with that. That's also what I want.
Relatable.
Yeah.
It's the Yoshikage Kira ideology without the murder.
Yoshikage Kira grew up in like the 90s listening to hip hop.
Kira was the true shonen hero all along.
Well, there you go. You heard it here on this show. Everything goes back to JoJo.
Kira did nothing wrong.
Like, no matter what manga you're reading is somehow related to JoJo. That's it. In fact, you don't even need to read manga anymore. Just read JoJo. You've got everything. You've covered everything.
I mean, speaking of like super JoJo vibes, though, like the biggest redraw like in this like volume is like on page 67, like right before like the end of like chapter 20, where like there's this scene where like it's Tokagera, like he's licking the sword that he has.
Oh, yes.
And like it looks nothing like the page in the original volume, for one thing.
It also looks nothing like a tongue.
Yeah,
like,
that too. It looks like some weird Laffy Taffy stuff. Like,
I think Takei really wanted to push the lizard angle there. Like, yeah.
What page is that again?
65.
Yeah, in the original one, this is part of that run that I tweeted that thread about. And in the original run, there is a panel of him licking a sword, but it's like a regular kind of blade licking thief type panel. And in this, Takei just pushes it further in a crazy way.
The fucking folds on the tongues don't do that.
Yeah, but I posted like the original page in the chat, and like, yeah, so like he's licking the sword there, but yeah, it's a tiny panel.
Yeah, he even changed the freaking panel.
And the dialogue's completely different too.
Yeah, Takei got really into this ending panels or ending chapters with this like thick border panel thing that I don't think he really did as much in the beginning. I'd have to go back and look. And so I think a lot of chapters have the last page redrawn or the last like panel to do that thick border thing.
Oh, I noticed that with the chapter that Anna shows up, like where we see like her full like her face and stuff. Like it had that same black border.
Yeah. It's at the end of most chapters at this point, I think.
Yeah, like in the original release, like he had it a few times, but like I think this time around he wanted it to be more consistent.
Yeah. Man, the original drawing of him licking his sword is actually pretty great. I like that drawing a lot. It's very silly looking though. It's less intimidating. This definitely, the new drawing gives that sort of creep factor a lot more.
I like the composition in the old one too, because you see like the sword kind of like connecting to, even though it's like a zoom in shot, like the sword is going in the same angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's actually a lot of merit with it too, and I like that you can see Sakaki Ro's like body, like whole body, in like the third panel, the old one.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about that like zoom in. I mean, it's in the new one too, and it's kind of cool here too because it's split between two panels, which I really love it when they do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of like how straightforward the old one was. I mean, not that again it's bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like this isn't a case where I'm like, oh, I wish you hadn't redrawn that because I don't like the new versions. I do like the new versions, but I also like the old versions. So I'm super torn on my feelings about this.
Why can't we have both?
Clearly, what we need is like the Fist of the North Star Kindle like book or whatever.
The
that's
E1
like
book?
the whole thing digital. Yeah, that one,
where you could tap on it and it would toggle.
Except this will toggle like the old version and the new version.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we need, the imperfect editions after the perfect editions. That's what I've said we need for Akira too, because like you see these, like he did a ton of crazy redraws from the magazine serialization to the volumes, and I would love to read those magazine versions. So I'm always like, wish there was an Akira like imperfect edition.
Imperfect
edition. Yeah, like the other strange change here too is like for the chapter 21 cover, instead of having Ryu and the gang like it is in the original release, they have young Amidamaru and Mosuke, which makes more sense because that's what the chapter's actually about. But
now this I could tell was redrawn.
Yeah, like that has the very angular Takei look.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that very much looks like modern Takei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and a really cool illustration of Ryu and the gang is just gone.
Yeah, it's so good too. Like,
yeah, it's like this cityscape. It's very cool.
Yeah,
Too bad.
I like it a lot.
Post it in Discord.
Yeah, I'm posting it right now. I took a picture of it ahead of time because I planned somewhat.
Oh damn!
It does look awesome though.
Yeah, it's so good. It really broke my heart when I saw that was gone. I was like, it makes me want to do what it sounds like you're doing and go page by page. And oh man, I'm just now realizing it says Ryu in the building, the windows that are blacked out.
Yeah, it does.
Oh shit!
Yeah, and out of everything, this is something I'm genuinely sad is gone because you didn't redraw it all; it's just gone.
No, this one actually makes me mad.
Yeah. Right?
Like I like what's in what we got in the updated version. Don't get me wrong, it's a really nice page too, but this one is actually, in this case, the old one's actually superior.
Now you feel my pain.
I do. I do. I want that one. Like this is so awesome looking. We need an album cover with that or something. God.
We need like a, what is it called? Just like a volume of like all of the redrawn pages of like the pre-redrawn pages.
Yeah.
Seriously, Takei, if you ever hear this, just saying.
Opposite of a remix, the A side.
Like on the left side of the page, like Muscle Punch looks like he's gonna like drop the sickest beat of like the 1990s.
That's the thing that makes me the most upset that we don't. Oh, they're like it's Muscle Punch and the kid with the raincoat on
with the hoodie. Yeah,
they both look like they're just about to hit a platinum. They're just about to spit on the most fire track, and I love it. Like all of them look. I'm looking at this page and I can't stop. Just. It's like that meme. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen today.
Okay, we love you, but why? Why did you do us dirty like this?
Yeah, I know. Like, what did he? It had to be a page count thing because I can't see him being like, you know what? this double page spread really bugged me because I didn't like the way the sword looked or something. Like, I don't know, like what he would possibly, why he would want to take this out. It had to be because he goes down from that to just a single page chapter illustration. So something got kind of reworked to the point where he had to lose it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, maybe the logic is like, oh, I already drew a chapter cover where Ryu looks cool. We have to get rid of another one.
Yeah. How many cool drawings of Ryu do you really need? I say all of
You
them.
can never have too many.
Yeah.
Never have enough.
God, in this case, the author, giveth, and God taketh away.
And another thing that I love about Ryu is his Saturday Night Fever jumpsuit thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It looks so good.
The page where he's like in the bowling alley or whatever. And
Yeah.
after was it to like the muscle punk or whatever that he like admonished, and then he does like that pose with like his finger up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
I'm looking at it now. Yes.
So good.
You're gonna convert into being a Ryu fan. I mean, not that I didn't like him.
I mean, who's your favorite character so far?
On this Ryu, I mean, Anna. Like,
Yeah.
straight up.
She's great.
Yeah, that's a fair choice.
Like,
She's up there for me.
like as I just got I just got the job, so I'm digging him so far too. I mean, he's the same as he was in the anime, really different, but getting his backstory and everything, because I just started his backstory.
Yeah.
Definitely getting that. I feel like he could be a favorite of mine. You know,
Who's Sakaki?
Jocko, or well,
Joko?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Choco. What?
I think it's Joco.
Yeah, Joko.
Right? And I think it's supposed to be like joke because he tells jokes like Joko.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
I think I mean, you know, it's a rework of Choco Love, but you know.
Yeah. Did not want to keep that name.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a complicated character, for sure. But I classify him under problematic fave.
Yeah, same here, because I like his character arc, but I have heard people, especially in the Black community, that have said, like, it is very problematic, and with good reason. Like, there are problems with that.
I like stuff that comes up. I'll be vague just in case any of your listeners are not reading ahead, but I like stuff that comes up with his backstory, but there's also elements of his backstory that are rough, you know. Shaman King in general has a problem that I think comes from a good place where it's Takei wants to pull in people of all different cultures and religions and backgrounds, but the problem is that once you reduce them to kind of characters that represent that nation or people, it turns into stereotypes a little bit. So, you know, that's just a problem that the entire series has, unfortunately. But it comes from a place of like being interested in kind of having a global interest and an interest in different people and different philosophies and ways of thinking and stuff, which I think is very cool and very good. But you know, it's undeniably problematic when you've got, you know, simplified depictions of all sorts of different people.
Right.
Yeah, you can tell it comes from a place of like wanting like genuine like a sense of like diversity with like just how like acknowledging how big the world is and like how many different kinds of people there are, and being able to like include them in your story. Like, yeah, like that's admirable, but also you could do a little more.
Yeah.
Like the G Gundam dilemma.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to like Joko eventually, the podcast, that is definitely an episode where I want to get like a diverse group of people to talk about, because I know for a lot of people that is kind of the make or break at times for Shaman King. Like, some people can't get into it because of Joko, and that is honestly completely fair. Like, I don't blame them.
Which makes me wonder how like the new anime is going to be perceived. It's like it's easy to edit. I won't say too much about it. It's easy to edit things in print or digitally. That's you know, hey, but is that going to be a thing on the table for new animes? It is a thing that worldwide people are anticipating. So is that something they're going to say, okay, we have to change this coming up, or they're just going to say, well, we're going to make it the way it was, and when it's out there being distributed, you guys do what you want.
I don't know. I feel like there's a chance of it being like the new characters design. There's a chance of it just being like knowing like how much more like international in general like anime is, and like how much money it makes worldwide now. Like for the sake of being, I guess I don't know how to phrase this. Like not inclusive, not like politically correct, but like sort of like along those lines. I could see them like going that way. Like if this were like 10 years ago, or maybe, yeah, like 10, 15 years ago, like they probably wouldn't even like bat an eye to it maybe. But like just the landscape of the industry has changed so much that like I feel like it's in their interest to pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, especially since like they're fully aware like this anime is gonna come out like in other countries. Like almost simultaneously in some cases. So yeah.
And they have to know, like, I wonder what Takei's perspective is on this, because I would have to assume, knows about the changes that are being made to his artwork in the international volumes. And, I think Joko's the most extreme case. I think there also is case for, I could see people having issues with the way, like, Native Americans and Chinese, for that matter, and like there's lots of different people from all over the world that are kind of, it trades a little bit in stereotypes, but I think Joko's really the one that's the bright red flag that that we'll see how it's dealt with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's something. As when his character was introduced, I was kind of wondering about how the upcoming anime is going to handle. But yeah, I guess it's a wait and see at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely a topic to dive into at another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we talked a lot about Tokagero, but moving on from that, like the volume basically ends with like the Shaman King fight kind of starting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I bring up like my favorite gag that was like brought up, or that was like shown in a panel? It was just like I wouldn't call it like throwaway, but it was just like a background gag that is just like, wow, he did that. There was like a panel as like you see like the shooting star or whatever at the bottom of one page, where it's like these two monks with like instrument, or one is holding like a I can't tell if that's like a sitar or something, and then there's like a car, and then there's like a billboard next to the car that says new album by Bose, and like it's clearly like a reference to the band Bees, like the apostrophe Z, and then like but like Bose is like obviously like Bozu, which is like a monk, and like this is Shaman King, and they're also like holding instruments, so they are the band, and yeah, it's so funny to me because like they're like such a legendary band, like for like Japan in general. Like I've seen them, like my first exposure to Bees like as a rock band was like in freaking like Burnout Paradise on the PSP. Like they had a song there, and I was just like, whoa, this is a Japanese band, but like the guy he has like perfect English and stuff, and
yeah,
this is so cool.
I remember Marion, you like sharing. I mean, like I mean, I've already clearly read the chapter where like Yo fights Bose, and I won't say too much about that, but yeah, I just love that like you said, Takei just goes there with these guys. I mean, like, and definitely looking at this again, Biz is thanks to Detective Conan, because they've done a lot of songs for that series. It definitely hits a bit different.
I love those guys, and I think that's the thing that's cool is that there's a lot of like music references and stuff, like Bob Marley obviously is like the Bob or is kind of an influence on the character Bob that is Yo's favorite musician, and Anna has a favorite musician named Ringo something that's I think a reference to Ringo Sheena. So there's a lot of kind of like call outs to
Ringo, Ringo Awaya, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. There we go. Yeah, I don't know what the Awaya is, if that has a meaning that I'm not picking up on, but yeah, I think that's cool. That's another kind of like thing that's, I don't know, it just seems like a very like hip for its time manga where he was really keyed into like music and movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting too because like in terms of like band references and stuff, like Takei does kind of the same thing in like Ultimo too, where like one of the main like enemies is literally the I think one of the singers for like one of the Saint Seiya openings.
Oh, nice.
A makeup project?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's the one that disbanded like shortly after.
I have to look that up. That's awesome though. I feel like there's a lot of like cool like mangaka that are like in tune to like the music scene and stuff, which I really love. And whenever we get like, even if it's just in like extras or whatever for volumes, like getting acknowledgement of like characters who, you know, like are supposed to be living in like the world that we do, and like they have like their own like favorites outlined for like music or whatever. Like I know I think for Bleach, like Tai Kubo,
Yeah.
like definitely like references like real world acts and stuff, and like same with like Crow's Worst author Hiroshi Takahashi. Like he brings up like real Japanese bands or whatever that like his characters listen to, and like stuff like that. Like acknowledgement of like real world like artists and stuff is so cool.
Yeah, you know, that sequence where the comets are going around Earth and you get these little like glimpses of different characters that Takei's kind of previewing is interesting because you can see how he's kind of tweaking them. Some of them show up later and look like slightly different, and some of them were like even in the color spread for chapter 1 and look slightly different from there. I think something that's notable, speaking of Conchi and Ponchi, those are two characters that appear on this uncensored, even though later when they show up, they are censored. The Tanuki and Fox with the big balls out.
Oh yeah, they are. I didn't notice that.
Yep. Yeah, they've been in a few color spreads uncensored too, which is interesting. But once they're like introduced as actual named characters, they get big bellies all of a sudden.
It took time to seal away the balls, clearly.
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, like the speaking of like kind of the cameos here, like the one that really stuck out to me was the fact that like the kids that have the golem, Red Sub and Serum, like they have their proper designs here, while in like the original one it's kind of a more kind of just vague design. So you can definitely see like Takei's kind of planning ahead here.
Yeah, so that's a thing that he got to change in the new volumes is he was like, let's update them so they look the way that they look when they show up.
He also decided to make Horohoro's hair slightly longer for some reason.
Oh, that's weird. Horohoro looks like kind of weird in that in this drawing to me. Maybe his bandana is a little too low or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It makes him like look a lot more menacing than he actually is.
Yeah.
He looks like he has no forehead.
But I like that he's decked out in his robes, which he like wears later in the series, but doesn't wear when he first shows up.
Yeah, so I'm looking at his like old design in this volume, and he looks way too much like Zoro.
Oh, really? Yeah, I can see that when Zoro pulls his bandana around his eyes.
Yeah.
Is it that kind of thing?
Well, it's that, but also the hair and the sideburns for it.
Oh, I gotta dig out that volume and see.
Yeah, I'm popping a picture of this.
Right.
Yeah.
This has been the highlight, is just seeing like just where we came from.
Wow. Yeah, he has this sort of blocky hair. Yeah, I think there is I think maybe in one of the color illustrations early on, he has that he shows up too with that blocky hair.
Like, can we talk about the text that finger being separated? Because that's bothering me a lot. now, and I know it probably shouldn't, but it is.
In the Viz one?
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
Viz
they made it way more
Harbinger is like two. Oh, what did you say, Mary?
They made it way more vertical in the Viz one.
Yeah. That's really bugging me right now.
And it's covering up a character.
Yeah, that really annoyed me.
Good. I'm so glad it's not just me.
But they...
I almost didn't see... Oh, go ahead.
No, it was a bad joke. How else are they going to show that beautiful shot of Horo's feet?
Yeah, we don't get to see his knees very clearly in the new version, so it's trash.
Yeah, I mean, I think his knees are covered, though, by the clothing, so no leg action for us. Takei hates skin now.
But they covered up his spirit partner in the Viz one.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, that's her name. But that's really terrible. But yeah, just I don't know. It's just I almost missed Horo just that text is so distracting.
Yeah, a lot of the times, like, not to diss the Viz release too much, the lettering looks really jank.
I mean, it's a product of its time.
Yeah,
it was a long time ago.
I can't blame it too
They have
much.
digital materials now.
Yeah, no.
Like, they have digital materials now, and that changes the whole game.
Yeah, especially on like the little character profiles, like that is like the hugest touch up because you can tell like what they had to go with like back in the day. Like they could not scan it in the high enough quality. So like on these ones, like it's so blacked out on the Viz one that half the time you can't tell like a lot of the minor details.
Yeah, I think the early chapters of Shaman King are old enough that they were still like laying lettering out like on paper, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely old enough.
Yeah.
God, I can't even imagine. I'm sitting here just in almost tears thinking about that. Just how much that must have been.
Yeah, I mean that's what they had to do for early Yu-Gi-Oh too.
Oh God.
Yeah, because I remember when Manga Mavericks had Jason on to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, and Brandon was also on it. I think like Brandon like freaked out because like he was like, "Oh crap, I couldn't do that now."
But yeah, and then the other shamans that are teased in this are the three women that come the flower team, and they're characters that I think are notable for like Takei's probably longest like tease. Like he had them in like chapter 1 and has drawn them like anytime he would like show all the shamans, they would always be around, and I'd always be like, "Who are these? They look so cool." And he obviously thought that they looked cool, but you don't meet them until like later, way later.
Yeah, like I always found it weird that the Hanagumi don't show up very early on, and even when they do show up, they don't have that much of a role.
No, yeah, I for years I was like waiting for them to do something because they seemed so cool, and he obviously like had them planned from the start because he'd throw them in. But I think for a long time he maybe just like had cool designs for them but didn't know what to do with them or something.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I think like they are pretty popular designs too. Like I remember like a lot of people were really receptive to those character designs, and like the fact that they aren't used more is kind of strange, but yeah, maybe there just wasn't a point early on where he felt like it would naturally fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Then by the time he got to him, it was just like, oh crap. I mean, it might have been just thing was like I kept drawing them, and then oh no, I didn't think about how to put them in there.
It's too late now. We'll distract them with shirtless Marco.
Well, it worked on me because I remember him many years later. So clearly, I have a lot of things to work out for
He'll
myself.
scream X, and all our memories will be erased.
Hold on, guys. I just need to over my car. But let's talk about Ren's horse because that's the best thing.
Did you mean Cavendish's horse? Because that's what it looks like.
It does, and I hate it.
Of course you went there.
And that's all what it looks like.
I don't like the fact that. Well, first of all, I love that Mary and I are still in sync because that's the first thing I thought. I was like, Cavendish, like, right? That can't be right.
Okay, so is it just me or is the head way too big?
That's what.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that is a funky looking horse.
It's like the muscles the size of Ren's entire body.
Ren's too small on this horse, or maybe it's just I don't know.
Yeah, he is very small and is a very. I mean, they get into like the horse, I think, a little bit later, which I love. This isn't giving too much away. It's a like shaman horse, which I think is amazing.
Which unfortunately is not the most ridiculous thing in this series, as we've already mentioned the cars, but
yeah, I was just about to say, freaking oversold cars.
Yeah.
It's like
our holy angel cars.
JoJo character had a literal car for a stand. That's what this is. Like, no, it doesn't do anything else. No, it's just a car.
But it's such a good car that's the ultimate oversoul.
Wait a minute. Shaman horse? Oversoul car? Did Shaman King predict the success of the Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie?
Oh my god.
That's a stretch.
That's how you know we're getting towards the end of the show.
Just the deliriousness.
Just in case you were wondering, Joey, that we start.
I'm good.
We start doing this. It's about to.
But no, I do like how this does end off with us going back to Ren, which it's been a while with Ren.
Yeah.
And like we're now kind of heading into like the next stage because the Shaman King fight's starting, and like Yo has to prepare. And I also like the little kind of dichotomy here between like Ren and June, because now June has a far different perspective than Ren, and like you can clearly see that she's like worried about the direction that Ren's going down too. So it's setting up some nice little plot threads.
Yeah, definitely. June has a spectacular dragon scarf too.
Oh yeah, she does.
She looks so cute. I love it.
Right. I really like this look.
Yeah, it's leading into good stuff. And I think at this point, like I kind of like that it must have been I think that he must have written these kind of purposefully to fill a volume each, because like it is basically like one volume is the June story and one volume is the Tokagero story, and then it leads off directly into this shaman fight in Tokyo stuff, which ends up really kind of shifting the series in a big way.
I'm excited to get back into that. It's been like I've been like reading these like as we record the episodes, so yeah, I'm looking forward to like starting the actual shaman fight stuff, because I remember bits and pieces, but not much, so it's been good, like just being along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
The shaman fight definitely kind of, like Joey said, it's the game changer for the series in a way. And especially with a lot of things it introduces in, just kind of how it changes up the format. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in how you and Sakaki react to it in our next episode.
I've been having a great time with it, so I can't wait to talk about it. But yeah, 'cause again, I don't know for sure since it's been a while. I actually was kind of having the anime on while reading the manga at like one point, so just to see the differences, and I think I'm slightly past where the diverse point. And it was interesting seeing just like how much there was a point where they were like reordering things in the anime too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, like one thing I remember from the anime is like the Hanagumi show up a lot earlier.
yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah, I think they're just obviously popular characters. Another kind of example of like Takei maybe like working against his own popularity a little bit and like not quite giving people what they want is that sort of frustrating thing of what we were saying about them not showing up when we wanted them to.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, if we ever do cover the original anime, I think that would be definitely something to talk about.
Yeah, I remember being kind of surprised when I started reading this. Of course, with just my memories of the anime, the fact that they don't show up early, I was kind of surprised because the anime made them seem like a big deal.
Yeah, and I remember like in I think it was recently the director of the anime even said like that he was told to not follow the manga essentially.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's Seiji Misushima,
Shima.
who also did FMA.
May, yes, and another series where he was told not to follow the manga. Though in that case, I don't know if in Shaman King's case if that was Takei that said, "Hey, go ahead, do your own thing." Because I mean, definitely for FMA, it's been documented that Arakawa said, "Yeah, make the anime different."
Yeah, I mean, I just assumed with Shaman King it was the sort of case of it catching up and them not knowing where to go, and Takei possibly not even knowing what to tell them.
I know this would be super difficult to do, but I would like to see just go from when the anime was announced to when it started airing and seeing where the manga was at those times to see if it was a case of catching up or if it was a thing where it was like, we purposely were told to make this as different as possible.
Yeah, because the anime started in 2001, so the manga would have been at like volume 12, I think? Maybe a bit further. Probably like volume 13.
Okay, so they had a good amount of stock.
Yeah, so that would have been like right around Joko's introduction.
Okay, so they had a fair amount of stock, and I feel like and then that's another thing to look up is like when did what episode exactly did the anime diverge? So I mean they obviously had elements of the manga in it, but the way that they were presented and used are way different.
Yeah, my favorite, while we're on the subject, I might as well say my favorite divergence that I remember is that they expand on Ryu's relationship with the guy in the pickup truck, Billy. There's a lot of like, I think there's like extended scenes of him like picking them up while they're hitchhiking and bonding or something like that that I remember being pretty funny.
Oh man, I have to watch this again now.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's finally streaming in Japan after ages of it not being available, so maybe we'll finally get it licensed again in the US. Hopefully.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I find that really interesting they did that, because it's not like they did that for Hunter x Hunter. Like, it's almost as if they want you to kind of forget about the 99 series, which I'm glad to, because I didn't like that very much. But that's a discussion for another day.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know people agrees with me. But yeah, I find it interesting that we're having this reboot, but they're making the old one available. So it does seem to suggest that they have plans for it. So
yeah, I mean, Takei obviously like has affection for it, considering the fact that he like demanded that they recast the same voice actors and stuff like that,
and even the same music apparently.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, he just that surprised me. Same voice actors, yeah, sure. I mean, but same music. I mean, I'm surprised. Well, I'm surprised he didn't make them get Yo's voice actress out of retirement. I guess that was the one thing. The one thing he just said, "Fine, I'll let you have that one," but everything else has to be the same.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how different it looks. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that's a good wrap-up point for this episode. I mean, thank you again, Joey, for coming on. This was an awesome discussion.
Sure, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, so where can people find you online if they want to hit you up?
Sure, they can find me on Twitter at Joey Weiser or Joey Weiser Comics on Instagram. Instagram is a little more streamlined, just my art. I do art and illustration and comics. You can check out my graphic novel series, Merman. It was a 5-book series, and my new self-contained graphic novel, Ghost Hog, which is about ghosts and haunting and things like that might tie in with some of the themes that we discussed in this episode, actually, which is interesting. And my Twitter is kind of a bit more all over the place, where I talk about like comics I'm reading. There's a lot of Shaman King talk these days, and movies and things like that. Yeah. Oh, and how about this? Listen to Toho Yaro. That's a Japanese film club podcast that I do with Alex from the One Piece podcast and our friend V. And that is a show where we watch a movie and rotate hosts talking about it. We just talked about One Cut of the Dead, a really fun zombie comedy movie. And I recommend kind of like going in, if you want to go into the archives. I recommend maybe somewhere in the last like 20 episodes, like from the Message in Space episode, which is like 35 or something. We kind of switched up the format, and I think the show's a lot tighter. So anything from there, just find a movie that you've seen or are interested in hearing about and don't really care if there's a few spoilers, and give it a shot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've listened to a little bit of Toho Yaro, and I've definitely enjoyed it.
Awesome, thanks. Appreciate that.
But Marion and Sakaki, where can folks find you?
I'll let the person with the most podcast affinity stones go first.
Oh my
I'm
god,
feeling pretty good, and I want to stay feeling pretty
All
good.
hail Thanos.
oh my god. You can find me. I co-host a lot of other podcasts. My first one though is the Good Friends Anime Club. It's at Good Friends Cast on Twitter, where me and a bunch of like 3 other friends get together and have like fun and friendly, inclusive conversation about anime, games, movies, manga, etc. You name it. That's been on hiatus for a while, but we still have lots of good episodes there. I'm also with that same group of people. We started a Dorohedoro podcast. It's called Shocking, a Dorohedoro podcast. It's a good joke if you read the series. But it's supposed to be like a monthly book club, which has also been on hiatus. That's at Dorohedoro Pod on Twitter. We did have a first episode for Volume 1 and for the first episode of the anime. Besides that, I'm also on at Haikyuu Pod on Twitter. It's a Haikyuu podcast where we cover the manga and the anime. Recently, we've come back to review the anime episodes that have been coming out like bi-weekly, so that's fun. Besides that, sometimes you can find me on Manga Mavericks or the MHA Pod. They're fun people. Definitely check them out. I'm not on every episode, obviously, but like they have tons of awesome hosts and cool things to talk about. Besides that, I write reviews on my personal blog, heavensdoorknob.wordpress.com. I just recently reviewed the first volume of Moriarty the Patriot from Viz. That one has an anime coming out right now, and I'm tempted to see now, to check out the anime, see how it is, because the first volume of the manga was pretty fun. Besides that, I write for Toonami Faithful at toonamifaithful.com, and I also write for Sakaki's blog, wsstalkback.blogspot.com. You can expect something new there probably next week.
Ooh, okay. Why do I sound surprised? But that, which is a great transition to me. I run WSS TV, as the website that Marion just said. Crap, stole my thunder. But
no, it's a transition, Sakaki. Come on.
Yeah, of course. I'm kidding. I run the Twitter, which is at WSS Talkback. Which is about Shonen Sunday, the not so well known shonen magazine outside of Japan and even in Japan. But if you're interested in seeing anything, learning more about Shonen Sunday, things that are not Conan or Takahashi, even though with all the Takahashi stuff I've been tweeting, you would know if there's anything else in there. But definitely give the Twitter a see. I worked really hard, and even today I just put up a translation of 20 questions from Japanese fans to Takahashi commemorating the beginning of the Yashahime anime. And of course, as I always say, if anybody's interested in writing about a Sunday manga, Sunday doesn't have to even be current running, definitely give us a DM or emails also in the Twitter profile, wsstalkback@gmail.com. anybody that's willing to write, because at this point I'm too busy with translations to do it myself. I also write for Toonami Faithful, and I've actually got something in the works for that. It's both sort of Sunday and something that I've been thinking about a long time. So look forward to that. I'm also on the Demon Slayer podcast with. So.
Oh yeah, that's one.
Yes, the biggest podcast that we do.
I'm also on that, and if you want my personal Twitter, that's at Kiirobon, at Kiirobon, and yeah, definitely give that one a see if you just want to see my non-Sunday thoughts, which usually bleed into becoming Sunday thoughts. So really, just follow WSS Talkback. That's probably yourself.
I mean, I'd say you should follow both. So follow both.
Forgot. I forgot my personal Twitter.
Oh my God, you did.
Whoops. That's not important though. Just kidding. It's at microwave with the E before the B.
Yeah, definitely follow Marion and Sakaki. They're both awesome. But if for some reason you're interested in following me, you can follow me on Twitter at VLordGTZ. I usually just post about like whatever I'm doing in the middle of the night because like I don't really
playing
sleep.
Dragon Quest at 3 a.m.
It's become No More Heroes now because the Switch version of No More Heroes 1 and 2 came out and it's super fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you're interested in like me just like rambling in the middle of the night, usually it's about manga. Follow me on there. But if you're interested in my reviews and writing, you can follow my writing on all-comic.com and also on Toonami Faithful, where I write more Toonami-focused stuff. Aside from that, I'm also streaming on Twitch occasionally, twitch.tv/VLGTZ, so check out that as well. And then podcast-wise, as we've mentioned, we host the Demon Slayer podcast, where we talk about Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. And you can follow that on Twitter at DSlayerPodcast, so go check that out. And then I do a general anime and manga podcast called the Dumbweebs Podcast, which is on Twitter at DumbweebsPod. But as far as Oversoul Shaman King Podcast is concerned, you can find that on Twitter at Shaman King Pod. And you can check out the podcast on a good majority of podcast platforms at this point. Spotify and Anchor are the main ones. But yeah, just look us up, subscribe, and enjoy our episodes. But that does it for this episode, so we will see you guys later.
Later.
Bye.